You ever been watching Ozark on Netflix and I don't know, you're only like 4 or 5 hours in and all of a sudden an episode ends and a message comes up and it says, "Are you still watching?" And you're like, yeah. And also I feel just a bit attacked. Me too. That being said, Netflix is still a great company to work for. They are extremely innovative, they've got a great company culture, they're amazing benefits, and despite several big companies coming into their space, threatening their dominance, they are still on top. And I'm guessing if you were watching this right now, you were either interested in working for Netflix or you have an interview coming up and you want to prepare. Well, guess what? You were in the right place. In today's video, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about succeeding in your interview with Netflix so that you can get the job. Let's go. Hi everybody, my name is Ben White with Ben Talks Talent. I've got 12 years experience in interviewing, hiring, and recruiting, and I am passionate about using my experience to help you become the best candidate possible and land your next job. In today's video, we're going to do something I love doing. I am going to profile the interview process of a company, tell you exactly what they do, the questions they ask, and teach you how to answer them. That way, when you go into the interview, you can absolutely crush it and you can land the job. I've already done this with Tesla, SpaceX, Amazon, Apple. If you have not watched those videos, I would highly recommend you go do it. I will link it in the description box, but they are great videos and I have received countless messages from people saying, "Ben, I watched your video and I got the job." Hopefully that's you with Netflix next. Now, before we get into the video, do me a quick favor. If you are new here, take 3 seconds, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and then hit that notification bell. That way you never miss one of my free videos that teach you how to become the best candidate possible. Sometimes I profile companies and tell you how to beat their interview process. But other times, I just teach you to be a really good interviewer. That is what you will get if you subscribe to my channel. With all that being said, let's get into the video. Now, the video today is going to contain a few things. I'm going to talk about some high-level things that are important to Netflix that you should know going in. That's going to be like the first half of this video. Now, the second half of this video is going to be confirmed Netflix interview questions I know for a fact, verified on multiple sources, that they are going to ask in your interview. And then I'm going to tell you what those are and what you should say to answer them. And not just answer them in general, but answer them for Netflix. That is really important because you're not just interviewing anywhere, you're interviewing for Netflix. So your answers should be catered towards what they want to hear, what makes them think you would be a really good employee. So we're going to start off with the high level stuff, but stick around because in the second part, we're going to be talking about questions they will most likely ask you. Now, every interview is different, so caveat there, it is possible that you go there and they ask you 3 or 4 of these, but they don't ask a few of the others. That's bound to happen. Interview processes change. Sometimes people don't ask the same questions in every interview, but the reality is you are probably going to get several of these, so it's important to know how to answer. Now, the first thing I want to talk about, high level, is culture fit. Now, culture fit is extremely important to Netflix. In fact, in my research, what I have found is that people who have interviewed with Netflix say it's more than 50% of the questions and the criteria that they end up choosing people on. So you could be someone who has superior technical skills, but you could go there, not be a good culture fit, and despite all the skills and everything you bring to the table from an experience standpoint, if you do not come off as a great culture fit, you will not get the job. In fact, one of the things that people have said is they do not tolerate brilliant jerks. Those are people who are exceptionally good at what they do, but they are terrible teammates and they can be a cancer to a team. Netflix specifically looks to find those people and move them out of their process because they are not willing to tolerate that. They are looking for smart people who are really good at their jobs, innovative, someone who is self-sufficient and does not need their hand held, but all that doesn't matter if you were not a good culture fit. So that's really important. So that's step one. We're gonna talk about some of the takeaways here. Before I want to do that though, I'm gonna move on to some of the other high level takeaways. One of the other ones is that the hiring manager here has a ton of decision-making authority. Now that's different from some of the other tech companies that I've profiled in the past, where everybody has to be on the same team. You have a panel interview, 5, 6 people talk to the person, the recruiter talks to the person, HR talks to the person, and they go, all right, it's either a hell yes from everybody or it's a hell no. That is not Netflix. Netflix really gives their hiring managers the ability to say yay or nay. So as you're going into this, what does that tell you? It tells you it is really important to nail that interview with the hiring manager. That is always important, but it's more important here because they are going to have the lion's share of decision-making authority. So that's takeaway number 2. The last big high-level takeaway that I found while I was doing my research for what makes someone a really great Netflix employee is that there is a lot of autonomy. They're going to hire great people and they're not going to micromanage them. That's awesome, in my opinion. That's a bonus for working with them. But what else does that tell you when it comes to interviewing with them? Well, it means they're probably going to look for people who have done well without close supervision, people who do not need their hand held by their boss, people who you can give them a goal and they're going to sprint to it. You don't need to worry about you saying, first do this and this and this and this, because you're the type of person who you can say, all right, Ben, here's your goal, and you get after it, and you do not need that guidance for every step along the way. So the third high-level takeaway is when you're giving examples, when you are answering their questions, when you are talking about the environments you like to exist within, you want to play up the fact that you like existing within an environment with a high level of autonomy, because you are the type of person who likes freedom, who likes to collaborate, and doesn't need every step to be laid out in front of them, because they are creative, they are innovative, and they are the type of person who can go get it without a lot of supervision. So that's one of the things you try to project when you're interviewing. Now I want to break these down just a little bit further. Let's go back to culture. So Netflix has 10 cultural values, right? And it is really important to know them. If culture is going to make up 50% or better of how they are screening candidates, how they are determining someone is a fit or not a fit, it makes sense for you to project that you are a great fit. So now so what are these 10 cultural values? Well, they are judgment, communication, curiosity, courage, passion, selflessness, innovation, inclusion, integrity, and impact. So I'm going to put them here on the screen. Here they are. Now, this can't be all the research you do. You can't just watch a video of me, although thank you, I think you should. You shouldn't just do that and be like, great, those are their values, I'm good to go. What I want you to do is also go to jobs.netflix.com/culture. I'll put that up on the screen here. Do that when you're done watching this video, because when companies have company cultural values, they also have definitions. Communication might mean one thing to Netflix and a different thing to Tesla. That's really important. So go to this website and read, because they literally have 4 or 5 bullet points after each and every single one of these cultural values. You need to familiarize yourself with them, remember them, and when you're going into interviews, you want to remember what those are and be able to speak to their definition of what communication is, their definition of inclusion, their definition of courage. All that stuff is extremely important. And let me give you a little bit of advice here. If you have 4 interviews with Netflix, one of the things I would do every single time before I went into one of those interviews is I would pull up that webpage and I would read through their cultural values. I'm telling you, it's 50% or better of how they're making their decisions. If you do not do this, if you do not familiarize yourself, and you do not weave their values into some of the answers that you're going to give, you are missing the boat. This is a great opportunity to come in there, show you are a great cultural fit, and land the job over more qualified candidates who don't do this. So go to that website, familiarize yourself, and weave it into some of your answers. Again, I want to focus on the hiring manager real quick. They make the call, so you really want to form a bond with them, right? You want to have a good connection, try to get to know them, and really just nail the interview with the hiring manager. Anytime you're talking to a hiring manager at Netflix, do not rest on your laurels. Don't be like, well, I had a good interview with the recruiter in HR, so I'm probably good. Because at the end of the day, if you made a pie chart of who's going to be making that decision, it's like one color. Hiring manager. So you need to go in there and crush that. And again, I would want to show them that I'm a good cultural fit, because that's going to matter to the manager, but I'm also somebody who can, just kind of run with things, solve problems, work collaboratively, and do so without being your handheld. Because that's just really important to Netflix. It's going to be important to the hiring manager. And that's a great segue into the last one, which is autonomy. If they ask you questions like, what kind of environment works best for you? You want to say something like, I like to work in an environment where I'm given a problem that I can solve, and I'm allowed to figure out the best way to solve it. I'm given a lot of autonomy to perform my task on a day-to-day basis, and if I'm successful, they give me that type of freedom because I thrive in that environment. Those are the things you want to say to show them, guess what? You like to give your people autonomy. I'm that person. I succeed in that type of environment. So that's the high level thing. What I want to do now is I want to go into some of the specific questions I know they're going to ask you, and I'm going to teach you how to answer them for Netflix specifically. So I'm going to start with a question that they didn't actually find. I didn't find this in my research, and I was really surprised. Be ready to answer it anyway. Why Netflix? Okay. So anytime you interview with a company, you need to be able to say why you want to work there. So my advice when I did this for Tesla, when I did this for SpaceX and Apple, is you need to talk a little bit about the position, why the position is interesting to you, and then a little bit about the company and why you respect them. Now, this could be their values, their products, their contribution to progress, whatever it is. 50-50 split, 50% the role, 50% what you admire about the company. That's a winning formula to answering this interview question. Now, the next question that you need to be prepared to answer, and I did find this on several sources, is you have a great idea for how to improve our product, but you're worried about stepping on someone else's toes. What do you do? Now, this is a great question, and when you're thinking about this question and specifically how you would answer it for Netflix, what I want you to think about is their company values, right? When you think about their company values, courage is a value. So someone who exemplifies courage would not be afraid to bring this up to somebody if they have an idea on how to improve a product. Communication is also really important to them, right? So you need to be able to communicate this to somebody else. Say, hey, I've got an idea on how to improve Netflix. Let me share it with you. And lastly, innovation. So if you've got an idea that is innovative and can help them improve, of course you would want to share it. So what I would do here is if I'm answering this question, I would kind of highlight that and say, look, innovation is really important at Netflix, and it's important to me too. So what I do is I would work with my manager and my team to explain why I think this is a great idea, why I think it can help, and I would lay out a case for how we can improve by doing it, get their feedback, and then work together towards implementing it. What this does is it answers a question successfully, but it also touches on 2 or 3 different things that are highly valued at Netflix. This next question is really interesting to me because I've never read it, I've never heard it. I profile a lot of companies. I've been in talent acquisition for 12 years, and I've never seen it. The question is, it's your first day on the job and you have a few hours to kill before orientation. What do you do with that time? Honestly, when I first read this question, I was like, why does that matter? And also, why do you have so much time before you have things scheduled? But what I would probably do as a candidate, I'd say, if I found myself in that situation with time to kill beforehand, I would try to be productive. I'd probably familiarize myself with what's going on, recent events for Netflix, in the news. I would familiarize myself again with your cultural values. Now that I'm a member of the company, I want to make sure that I'm exemplifying that on my first day. So I'd probably go through that again. And I'd find a way to just give them a productive answer, right? Netflix is a type of company where people are expected to be productive, solve problems. And an answer where you're like, yeah, I don't know, I'd probably sit around and go try to find a bead mag chair probably isn't gonna cut it. Now, this next one is a really important question that you might get when you're interviewing with Netflix. And it's, tell me about a disagreement you've had with a coworker from another functional area. What is the nature of the disagreement, and how did the two of you go about working together to resolve it? Whenever you have an interview question and they talk about, you hear something where they are suggesting an outcome, either positive or negative, you pay attention to that, right? So they say, how did you go together to resolve it? So they're not looking for you to tell a story about how you went around them or you opted to do it alone. They're looking for collaboration. One of the things that I think is really important here when you think about this question is they're also indicating that cross-functional teamwork is important to them because that's at the foundation of it. So when you're answering this question, it is important to remember 2 things. You want to talk about how you worked collaboratively, you communicated with them to be as effective as possible, right? That is really important. So you've had a disagreement, but you go, you know what? We have the same goal. Our goal is working to improve Netflix or whatever company, we're talking about here. So you're going to work together to find common ground, find understanding, and then, listen to their perspective and move forward. And then you also want to say, the second thing is, cross-departmental or cross-vertical collaboration. You want to show that you're the type of person who has experience doing this. Be like, that's something I've actually done a lot in the past. In some of my previous roles, we frequently collaborated with different departments, different verticals of the organization. And it's actually something I really enjoy because it allows you to solve a problem from a different perspective. That's a great way to say, hey, guess what? I've done this before and I like it and I can do it for you, but make sure you highlight the communication and working together to solve problems. That's always going to be really important to them. I found this next question really interesting. The question is, we have all received feedback about where we can improve. What types of feedback have you heard consistently throughout your career? This implies that there is a problem that you have not solved. Because it wasn't just you got feedback, it's feedback you've gotten consistently, right? So something you haven't been able to solve. So I found that really interesting. I never heard that interview question before, but here's how I would answer it as a recruiter. I think it's important to still show that you've solved it now. But what I would do is I would look at the first half of your career and pick something that you receive feedback on multiple times, right? And it can't be something overly damning. It can't be something where if you receive feedback on this, that's bad. Like, yeah, I used to receive a bunch of feedback for theft. I just kept stealing things place after place. I finally stopped. That's bad. So an example that I would use that I think will work is early on in my career, and I got this a few times, so as feedback I receive consistently, is that if I'm having a problem, instead of working to try to solve it and taking a lot of time to resolve issues, it's okay to tap someone else on the shoulder who maybe has more experience and get their perspective so I can move quicker towards a solution. I have a tendency to want to solve things myself and be really self-sufficient. So early on, that was an issue for me. I got that feedback multiple times, but eventually what I learned is that there are some problems where it actually behooves you to communicate with others, take their expertise, and find a shortcut to the solution. That's a great way to answer it because it's something that all of us could deal with, and it also underscores a behavior that Netflix actually will value: the ability to work autonomously. You want to work by yourself, you want to solve things. Now, it's a little bit of a flaw to not be willing to ask for help, but it's not a terrible one, and then you've already fixed that, you've learned from it, it just took you a bit. The next question is really cool. I'm really digging these Netflix questions, so bear with me on my talent acquisition nerdiness here for a little bit, but the question is, tell me about one of your most trusted mentors. What have you worked with them that's informed you about the way you work with others? So it's not just, hey, do you have a mentor? It's also, tell me about how your mentor made you better to work with. Remember, culture is really important. Being a good teammate's really important in Netflix, and showing their culture, that is key. So what I would do here is I would talk about how your mentor was really important to you and how they taught you to communicate to others, to pull from their experience. This is also a great opportunity to talk about inclusion. Something like this. One of the things that I learned really early on from my mentor is to seek out the opinions of others. You might think you have a good solution, but if you don't talk to other people and get different perspectives, you may be missing out on better solutions you weren't aware of. Diversity of thought can be incredibly important. So a big takeaway that my mentor shared with me that's been truly a gift is to work with others to find alternate solutions so that you can get closer to the goal with your company. Something like that. Bad close, but the foundation is there. And I think that's a really good answer. And it's again, if they give you these open-ended opportunities to speak to their cultural values, take advantage of it. The next question is a really common question. They phrase it a bit different, but it's a question you'll see at many major companies. And it's, how did you handle a task where you had a deadline you couldn't meet? We have all been there. Nobody has turned in work 100% on time their entirety of their career. So it is okay to be in the position where you didn't do that. So my advice here is one, you can't say, well, that's never happened to me because I believe in deadlines. No one's gonna believe that. They're gonna think that this person is a turd. Be authentic. It's okay to be a little bit vulnerable, especially if you've learned from it. So when you're answering this, what you wanna do is talk about how you realized you couldn't meet a deadline. You understood the gravity of that, you communicated this to the person who that would impact negatively, and you talk about how you found a mutual understanding and what you did to make the situation right. Make it your own, but that's how you do this. Again, quick note, tell me about a time when. We've talked about this before on my channel, but any time a question starts with that, that's a behavioral interview question, meaning you use the STAR method. Situation, task, action, result. Use that framework to answer the question and you will knock it out of the park. This question's really common. Tell me about a time you disagreed with your manager or you didn't agree with your manager. It's really important to do a few things here. One, you are doing your manager a disservice if you find out information they're not aware of and they're making a wrong decision and you don't communicate that to them. But you need to do this in a way where you bring data so you could show them why your way is right, and you need to do it in a respectful manner. So when you're answering this question, be like, I became aware of something that my boss was not aware of. He gave me a task to do, or she gave me a task to do, but I understood this wasn't the right approach. So what I did was I pulled them aside, I presented them with some information they didn't have access to, and showed them why doing it another way would be more beneficial to the team or to the company. Ultimately, they agreed, and we are better off for it. You want to say it slightly differently, obviously, but that is the core of what you're trying to communicate. If you can do that, you will succeed in answering this interview question. The next question's funny. It's real similar, actually. It's like, I feel like it's almost a bit redundant, but tell me about a time you screwed up at a previous job. Here's the key here. Anytime someone asks you, tell me about a time you messed up at work, or you did a bad thing at work, cut your career in half. Make it from the first 50%. So it wasn't something you did yesterday. It's not something you did a week ago. If your career has been 8 years long, make it something that happened in the first 4 years. Be authentic. Talk about how you made the mistake. It can't be something terrible. It can't be theft. It can't be, insider trading, right? It's something that anybody could reasonably make in terms of a mistake, but it's a mistake. It's real, right? Not, well, there was a time I cared too much. That's just gonna sound corny. Make it a real mistake, and then talk about how you learned from it. So remember, first half of your career, talk about how you were better for it now, and how that experience made you more effective at your job. The next question is really cool, and it's a question that people get asked a lot, but in slightly different forms. And what is an example of something you worked on that you were really proud of? Anything Elon Musk related, Tesla or SpaceX or the Boring Company, they're gonna ask you about your big accomplishments, and they're gonna ask you to explain it. And they're gonna ask you questions like, okay, that's what you did. How long did it take? What did you learn? What would you have done differently? What was your aha moment? Who did you work with? What percentage was you? What percentage was outsourced to other people? You get what I'm saying. It's not enough to have an example. You need to remember the details of your example. So think of something where it was a big problem. Think of something where you had autonomy, because this is Netflix, and think about something where you had to work collaboratively, bonus points if it was with a different department, because that's important to them. So if you can do those things, you're not just answering it, you're answering it for Netflix. Next question, this is totally a Netflix question because of everything we've said up until this point, but how do you stay organized? How do you handle competing tasks or deadlines? Because Netflix is going to give you a lot of freedom to do things on your own time, you have to convince them that you are the type of person who has an effective process. You schedule effectively, you get things done. So whatever your process is, just lay it out and be specific. Talk about how you use Outlook to schedule times. Talk about how you write a list at the beginning and the end of the day of tasks that you need to complete, and you do those things right away. Talk about how organized you are. Whatever it is, make sure they feel comfortable going, yeah, Ben is clearly a person we can give a task to, and we don't need to worry about checking in on him. He's gonna do it because he has an effective method, an effective system. Do that, you will be okay. Last question, I love this one. I might ask this for my team in the future, but it's describe how you would deal with a very opinionated coworker. They want good teammates, right? They want someone who's a culture fit. So what I would do here is understanding culture and communication are very important to Netflix. Talk about how you'd work to find common ground and emphasize that different opinions are important because diversity of thought helps you find solutions you might not have otherwise had. As long as you say something like that, you're gonna satisfy what they're looking for this question. But remember, it's all about working together. It's all about understanding there's value in different opinions, valuing that, and then having the courage to work together to accomplish difficult common goals without significant oversight. That is Netflix in a nutshell. If you can answer all those questions, you're gonna crush your interview. Remember, culture, hiring manager, autonomy, all these things are really important. Focus on that. Good luck in your next interview, specifically your interview with Netflix. You got this.